Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of Demystifying Money. I'm here with John Hannum. He is the founder and CEO of PPS Solutions, which provides fractional CFO and full-service accounting and finance packages to growing businesses. He has a 25-year background in corporate finance as the head of finance for companies with incredible growth trajectories. And now he focuses on providing the financial firepower normally only available to the larger successful companies to smaller growing businesses that need it most. Thank you so much, John, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Misty.
This episode of Demystifying Money with Misty Lynch is proudly sponsored by Soundview Financial Advisors. Visit www.soundviewfinancialadvisors.com to learn more.
Tell me a little bit about your company and how you got your start in business. I know a lot of us know what a CFO is at a large corporation, but tell me a little bit more about your start in business and what made you lean towards the finance side.
Sure. I spent my career in kind of corporate finance, going up through accounting and then financial planning and analysis, kind of rounding out the idea of what a CFO is, which is both of those halves, along with operations and everything else. So I always thought I would stay in that role and keep growing companies and go to another company and do the same thing and take it public and ring the bell and kind of have this exciting life of really helping big companies get bigger. And then early in the pandemic, I had left a construction company that we took public in 2018. Really had the first probably 2 week stint off in a very long time. And the pandemic happened and I didn't have much to do for a couple weeks. A friend asked me to consult for a small business. Had no reason to say no. It was just littler than I would have looked at previously. And when I got in there and started looking at what they were doing, their processes, the way that they were actually running their company, I thought, oh my God, these people need finance. They're making decisions that aren't in their best interest. They're doing things without data, without good kind of solid analysis behind it. So I really shifted my focus pretty much April of 2020 to growing big companies, to really servicing that idea of a large company CFO helping small companies with their finance. It's really a missing hole in the market.
Yeah, no, I think it's true. And I think we always think about, I worked at a large company for a long time where we had a CFO and we had a finance department doing all of these things. And a lot of entrepreneurs that go into business to solve a problem, help people, all of these things that they want to do, the finance side, maybe they think about getting lending or they think about sales, but there's so many different parts, and finance really touches every aspect, I think, of the business, whether it's what you're spending on, what you're bringing in, how much you're charging. And so sometimes I think that is a missing piece where people don't really know who to consult with about that particular side of the business. So I think it's really cool. Have you always been a numbers person? What was money like for you when you were growing up with your family?
Non-existent. My parents actually ran a chain of scuba shops with a couple of partners. They actually expanded to about 5 shops in Florida before they sold and broke up the partnership. It was a lot of work, and I saw them working all the time. I worked in the shop. I actually learned how to fix things and do things and do some of the bookkeeping when I was 8. So I figure I've been in this business a really long time.
Oh,
But it wasn't as successful now, I realize, as it could have been, right? If they had somebody in that organizing their finances and really kind of getting them the liquidity they needed to grow and be successful, the planning every year. They didn't do a budget. They didn't do a cash flow forecast. They walked in the door, they opened the shop, and they tried to stick as many people in the water as they could.
yeah, no, I understand. That was my parents' business as well. It kind of ran out of money at one point, just because when money was good, money came in, we were spending money, and then really not. That's kind of why I do the planning work that I do as well. It's just because I feel like things could have been so much easier or better if there was a little bit more attention, not just paid to like income and sales, but really that investing side and how you can actually use that business to how people can actually grow a small business instead of thinking it's just that hustle and grind. How many hours can I work? How many people can I meet with? So that's interesting that you've been in this space since you were 8 years old. So you've got, years, some experience under your belt, which is pretty cool. What is a CFO necessary? So I think a lot of my listeners are business owners who've maybe worked with a bookkeeper or a CPA. What is the, first of all, how are you different than those pieces of the finance? Or is that a part of the role as a fractional CFO?
It kind of is, but it's really a complementary idea. So the CFO really is it's a chief role that encompasses accounting and financial planning and analysis, along with risk mitigation, controls, all types of things in a larger company. But the main important parts for small business are really the accounting and the FP&A, financial planning and analysis, building a budget, cash flow forecast, that type of thing, and analyzing the numbers. The We can do the bookkeeping. I always call it accounting. I don't necessarily use the B word, but I use accounting specifically because it is more of an accrual aspect. You want to look at your operations more than just for your tax return. You want to do it on a routine basis, close your books every month, et cetera. There's a cadence to the accounting that's important. Or we can work with CPAs that do that, because it's a subset of the service, and we work very well with a lot of CPA firms. In fact, of my clients currently in the portfolio, well, over time as well, most of them have come from CPAs and enrolled agents who do tax, and their clients are kind of getting out of that space of, I don't want to tell you if you should rent this warehouse or hire a marketing manager or do something. This is really something that you should ask your CFO. So the CFO is going to help you make good strategic decisions. They're going to help you analyze your numbers, understand what your intentions are, put those into a budget or a forecast, and really help you pull the operational levers in finance to get you where you want to go. It's a continual thing. It's not like the CFO comes in and says, "Here's finance. Have a good life."
Mhm.
It's it's something that you do every year, every quarter, every month. Finance is ingrained in everything. So the CFO is somebody you call on a routine basis to help you make decisions or understand a trend.
Yeah, I think it's sometimes that I'll hear people that are saying, like you mentioned about like, expanding the location or all of those questions. And so sometimes I think that people are missing that person to consult with on that, or they might hire a business coach that maybe is a sales coach or somebody but isn't really looking at their particular business or their numbers. So I think that could be, and it might be a question that maybe their accountant or bookkeeper isn't really equipped to answer because they're focusing on really the taxes and what they're looking at there. So I think it's a helpful piece. When do you feel like that finance piece, when is it time to maybe consider hiring a CFO? Like at what point in your business would you think it would make financial sense to think about consulting with someone like you?
Sure. So, obviously, when you get to be larger, you almost have to have a full-time CFO, and that comes with just being able to afford it. You don't want to spend, all of your income on somebody that's pretty expensive, honestly. Good CFO makes, in general, a good portion of what a CEO makes in a larger company. So it's good salary. Um, the idea of this fractional CFO kind of fitting into that space as a subscription or as a number of hours, a day of the week, maybe that type of thing, uh, is money well spent. You can get somebody for a fraction of that cost. But you want to put that person in as soon as possible. You obviously don't want to go into the red hiring that person and getting that person in the door, but you're going to need some setup on your front end, right? Your bookkeeper or your CPA, and setting up your chart of accounts when you first start your business, is functioning in that CFO role. They're going to make decisions as they do that will impact you later, and sometimes they're great and sometimes they're not. And when the CFO gets in, they have to change the chart of accounts or figure out a way to change the accounting so it's a little more operationally focused, et cetera. But I think you need that strategy all the way through. The question is when it comes from a CFO, and I think that's different for every business. But really, it's when you can afford it,
Okay.
right? If you should spend some money on important things as you have that money to spend.
Mhm. So with a fractional CFO, like you mentioned, like a CFO could be a 6-7 figure position at a larger company. So would this be something where if you had in your budget, maybe, is it under, as far as a yearly, would it be under $10,000, or does it depend on the size of the business or how much you need? Like, do you look at the size and the scope of the project when you think about the subscription rate for those types of businesses, or is it fairly a flat fee? Or if you have about this much in your budget, you might be able to hire somebody to help.
It's an art, not a science. There's definitely a matching. services and size and all of that to go with it. So, the basic package, the basic idea, the kind of the entry level CFO, if you want to get to that, really is, your budget planning and your accounting. I would say that's in the low thousands per month.
Yep.
So if you're $36,000 a year, you're getting a service that's going to help you do, something that really is, kind of a $500,000 position in
Like a
the end.
full-time employee at this
Yeah.
particular price point. And so I think it's interesting because I do know a lot of businesses that do get to a point and maybe they did a business plan when they first started to, get lending, or maybe they had a business plan in mind when they were launching the business. And then it's kind of like they just get to work. What with the CFO, would that be kind of consistently reviewing that business plan as the business grows and changes? Or is that something like, do you do something with business plans, or what are your thoughts on them in general?
Sure. In general, they are required. Obviously, for SBA, there's a form that you'd fill out, and your bank's not even allowed to give you the loan without submitting a business plan that they can read and understand. I think it's a little bit undervalued during that process, right? We get through it by saying, yeah, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to write it down, and you never pull that piece of paper out again. The piece of paper itself is not important. The way that you lay out that business plan for the SBA is fine. It's really the act of thinking about the strategy of what you want to do and then executing that strategy. Now, the thing that's missing from the business plan, and the reason it goes into the filing cabinet and never comes out again, is it should become a living document. It should become a budget or a cash flow forecast or something that you can look at, maybe a spreadsheet that you would look at, and you would see how you're doing. So as your first month, your first quarter, your first year, you basically pull that plan back out, compare your actuals to it, and say, how did I do? And of course, if I've only had one time in history that number was exactly what we forecast,
Wow.
it was pretty
That's
amazing
funny.
feeling.
Yeah.
It's usually not. It's usually, there's some variance. But then the most important part of that is, why is there that variance? Did we do better or worse than expected in revenue, gross margin, profit, whatever it is? And then why did we do better or worse? Is it market condition? Is it something we did that was magical? Do more magic and try and outgame the market every time, and you keep just reviewing your results, right? Every month, every quarter, every year. You look at your financials, you look at your plan and say, did we do what we were supposed to do? Then we adjust the plan going forward to say, do more magic, do less unmagic.
Yeah, that's amazing that you got it right once. I when it comes to financial planning, like typically I'll deliver a financial plan for like a couple or a person, and then these are all just hypothetical numbers. Lots of times, things are going to end up being different. There might be different market returns, different spending, all these things. And so basically, it is like a guide that has to continue to be updated. It has to, because your salary might change, all these things change, and the piece of paper itself isn't exactly the point. But you're right, people do kind of use that as okay, this is what I have to do to get the SBA approval, but I don't ever want to look at it or touch it again. Do people have a little hesitation when it comes to hiring you about what you're going to come in and say or do?
Maybe. I think that there's always a need, right? If you're okay with what you're getting, it's difficult to sell a service that you don't understand, right? I've still never received a call saying, I just woke up this morning and decided I needed a fractional CFO. You really have to educate people on what they're getting and why they need the service. So there is a longer sales process. By the time we get to actually doing the service, in most cases, they know exactly what it is. They know exactly what to expect because we've set it up from the very beginning. Here's what we think we can do for you. There is a natural hesitation because you have to be very open with your CFO. It's like going to the doctor's office. If you don't tell them how it really feels and how how bad the pain really is, they really can't help you get better. And I think your CFO is very much similar. You can't hide operational difficulties. You want to really address things that are hitting your finances, and otherwise you're going to get bad advice. Your CFO is a partner, and so the time to incubate that relationship takes time, right? You have to trust the person that you're working with. You have to feel, like you can open up to them about your finances, probably in the same way that you're a financial planner, right? You have to be honest with that person to make sure that the plan that you're generating is going to get the results and it doesn't have the risk that that could be there if you don't talk about it.
You mentioned that part of your job is risk mitigation. What are some of the things that you're helping small businesses kind of identify and resolve when it comes to that end of the business that might not be as apparent as certain things like income and expenses?
Sure. The most obvious is insurance, right? So we normally look at all the insurance policies and help negotiate or help look at at the types of coverage, the rates of coverage, making sure that the business is fully covered for what it's doing. I would say some examples that we have there. There's some huge swings in workers' comp. I deal with a lot of construction companies right now, so uh, huge swings in workers' comp, doubling, tripling, quadrupling of premiums. So kind of looking at different options to bring that down. Making sure that the safety programs exist. It's a little bit operational and a little bit just working with the insurance companies. The idea of corporate governance, directors and officers insurance, employment practices, liability, PLI, those things aren't really thought about in a small business because you're not hiring and firing a lot of people. But, a single claim in that regard could really set you back hundreds of thousands of dollars. So making sure that the landscape of insurance is available is there, is part of a comprehensive package. We do look at and provide the accounting behind that. For example, I had one client that was still just submitting an inventory at like kind of $1 million a year because that's what was on the original schedule. When this person had about $5 million worth of inventory in a warehouse burned down, they'd be
Yeah, right. But that's things that we
yeah,
don't necessarily revisit. We kind of just do what we did last year, kind of like when people are signing up for the benefits, they just kind of continue to stay with it. Yeah, no, I can see how that could be very helpful, even if it's not something that's top of mind until it is. And
yeah.
then you gotta figure it out.
Could also look at fraud prevention and safety. We always recommend some of the treasury things out there, working with your banks like Positive Pay. One of the charities that I work with had some fraud recently. Yeah, that would have been prevented immediately by having Positive Pay, but they didn't like the idea of putting that in because it required two people to
What is that?
to
Can you explain that?
Positive Pay. Sure, Positive Pay is just it's a bank feature that allows you to tell the bank what checks to clear and what checks not to. So when you write a check, you tell the bank, and they only clear those checks. In this case, someone had taken a check and had kind of erased the printing off of it, totally forged a different number and a different payee, and got 5,000 of their dollars. So it had an impact.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. You mentioned working with construction companies. Are there any particular industries that you've seen have been very well served by having somebody in a fractional CFO role? Or I know most businesses probably could benefit, but are there any particular areas that have been very, where you felt like you've been able to add value right away?
I think we almost always add value right away. My background is in kind of hard lines, services, et cetera. So construction, manufacturing, distribution, retail. I spent 17 years as a tire retailer, so
Okay.
I understand retail and kind of real estate through that as well. But I probably couldn't add value in a healthcare company or aerospace, or if I had to go run Disneyland, I wouldn't know how that worked.
So are there
But
would you say that's like one of the good things, a good question to ask a CFO if you're looking at bringing one on about their actual business experience?
it is. I think there are a few different things you should work with your CFO on. One is that they have industry experience and they understand your business, because there are things in construction that somebody from outside of construction wouldn't know or wouldn't understand. They have to learn. The most important thing behind that really is fit, though. Do you trust and do you like that person? If you don't like the person that you're going to work with, you're just not going to have a good relationship. So like everything, it's culture, fit, leadership. Does this person inspire me to be better at my finances, or do I not want to talk to them? I hate to say it that way, but if I don't like my CFO, I'm not going to call them and ask them questions.
You'd be surprised how many people I talk to that we have a discovery call and they're like, oh, I don't like talking to my investment advisor at all. I actually avoid that conversation. I think, and it's funny because it's like, this is an investment that you're paying, so I think finding somebody that's a good fit or that you want to talk to or that you would reach out to without question it's interesting when it comes to money, how we're often been like, all right, well, we don't think about it the same way we do when we're like looking for other services. where it's like acceptable to not want to talk to the person, which hopefully that will change the more people actually, learn about, financial literacy and getting involved in the numbers and how could somebody like you or I help, with something that isn't just a, I don't want to look at it type of thing, but it is interesting when I see that. I had a question for you with, some people that I talk to that love the numbers. What is the career path? What would you say to somebody who says like, I think this is something that I might want to do as a business? What are your thoughts on that for somebody who might really love this line of work and getting into the weeds on the business end?
Sure. So, it's not for the faint of heart. There are several career paths into being a fractional CFO, and I have very strong opinions on some of those. The most common right now is going through a CPA. So, CPAs are being convinced that they can add that service, as a monthly subscription or an extra service that they're performing in addition to the taxes. And I think um, some of them are very successful in that. They do have the financial acumen and the understanding of finance to be able to give some of that service, but I don't think they have the operational side. And that's where, my opinion is that you should have been in the CFO chair in order to be a good fractional CFO. I am a CPA. I'm not a good tax person. I would not trust myself without proper help, to fill in a tax form correctly. So I don't want to go to jail. I don't want my clients to go to jail. So we outsource those functions, and I have great partners who, I don't even do my own tax returns. It's terrible to admit.
I don't either.
But
I don't care. I could. I look at it, my husband's father was an attorney for the IRS, and he's like, I feel like I shouldn't. I said, no, this is, I would rather bring this to somebody who is up to date on this year's tax law changes and everything like that, and refer that out to people and then work together with them, because it is such an important, it's so important, but also, it's a little bit nuanced and always changing. And a lot of the CPAs that I've experienced lately have been very, very busy or almost like they're not, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of wiggle, like space to spend a ton of time doing the consulting and the strategy side of that piece. But I know it's a need. So that's an interesting that could be a route for somebody who is interested in that, is working in conjunction with a CPA to get
it
those
is.
results.
Like I said, most of my clients have actually come from CPAs and enrolled agents who do tax and have access to the people that are calling them because they're a known commodity. If you think about something financial, you don't think I should Google fractional CFO. You think I need to find a CPA. So it's a gateway actually to the financial service realm. You might need your tax return done. You might need some accounting or bookkeeping done. But ultimately, as you grow that business, regardless whether somebody helped you at the beginning,
Mhm.
you're gonna need a CFO, right? You don't wait until you're $100 million company and it's all kind of disjointed and clunking along at $100 million to put in your first person. That person's going to have a big job,
Yeah.
right? That's why I like the idea of the fractional. Give it a little slice of CFO, and that slice of CFO increases over time.
Right. And then it could eventually develop into a full-time position once you get to that level, but that would be then the good problem to have, right?
Success in our world means we work ourselves out of a fractional job, right?
Mhm.
Success means you're ready to hire a regular CFO.
Yeah. Are there any success stories or any examples that you are able to share with working with any clients that maybe have been struggling in their business at some point or another and maybe ready to see if they need to go back to corporate or call it a day, where you've been able to kind of come in and help?
Um, Not specifically like that. I mean, we had a lot of success stories in accomplishing the goal. I work with a private equity company where they had acquired a small company and we're kind of needing to get that company into their
Yeah.
portfolio. So I worked on that and integrated that, got all the reporting done, and then ultimately, uh, we were able to acquire another company that was actually larger. So the smaller company acquired the larger company, which came with its own CFO. So ultimately we worked ourselves out of a job there, and that was great. um it felt very good to put all that together and call it successful. I worked, my very first client was a partnership dispute where there were literal death threats and all kinds of cultural issues with the company. We did a finance solution to that by actually doing a partnership buyout where we did an SBA loan, got some financing in place, and were able to solve the issue between the partners, who had been friends for 30 years, um,
Yeah.
by
Well, I mean,
buying one out.
a lot of times it is financial, and then you're like, hey, let's
Yeah.
let's figure out how to solve this problem, because usually, I hate to say, money doesn't solve every problem. I've said that plenty of times, but it solves a lot of them pretty well.
Yeah, it's true. And it kind of shows how finance can actually solve a problem that isn't financial, but
Yeah,
that would have been a terrible situation to continue with this ownership with this company of people that were fighting, right?
right.
It would have ruined the company. And it was actually a great little company. It's
Yeah.
it's doing very well, and I'm very excited that we were a part of it.
Yeah. No, I think, yeah, it's interesting to see how, I think it's with, especially with the mergers and acquisitions that you mentioned before, like that is a big, if you don't have your finances in order, like something like that is probably just never going to happen as far as, being able to know if you're ready to acquire or to be acquired, to be the most desirable candidate if you're looking to sell a business. Not having those numbers in order probably hurts your chances quite a bit. No, or maybe you get taken advantage of in that situation.
Oh, I always advise, because I do a lot of work with acquisitions and entrepreneurs that want to acquire something. It is fine to acquire a mess, right? Because that's where there's opportunity. Chaos creates opportunity. Opportunity creates discount, and you can pick something up that's interesting and messy,
Mhm.
clean it up, and turn it into something. So when you go to sell your company, though, being organized is going to give you a very nice premium. Having somebody on the inside of that company presenting the financials, year over year, increases in your metrics, et cetera, is going to give you a really strong case for evaluation. People are going to pay a higher multiple on that company than they would for the mess that you acquired. So I like the idea of entrepreneurial cleanup, and it's you don't have
Yeah, no,
you
it's
should.
it's interesting. You're right. I think that there are certain times where it depends on what side of you're on. If you're somebody who's just like, I don't know, pay me whatever. I just want to, I want to retire. I know there's a lot of there's a lot of people who are self-employed that really don't think about exit planning or
It's a shame. I think they lose a lot of value that way.
mm,
So it's um, on the acquisition as well. I'm not an advocate of taking over a mess without verifying what the mess is. So I do really believe, and we actually provide diligence services as well. So quality of earnings reports, due diligence reports on anything that you're buying. It is really important to kick the tires, which is something we used to say in the tire industry
mhm.
on a company.
Yep.
Little pun. Um, kick the tires on anything you're buying to make sure that the numbers are solid. I definitely wouldn't not do the diligence on anything that you're buying, but just because their accounting is a mess, or that you can cut
Mhm.
through it with a little bit of diligence, you can really get a bargain on something that should be more valuable.
Yeah, and then you can make it more valuable once it's
Mhm.
yours, right? Um, I think it's interesting to have this conversation. I know there's a lot of times where maybe people who have businesses or love entrepreneurship, they'll watch something like a Shark Tank and they'll hear somebody who doesn't know their numbers and they don't get a deal, or they kind of get left out of the show. So, what do you think is the first step? So maybe you're a business owner right now and you feel like, you know what, this is an area that I'm weak. What would you say would be one of the first steps for somebody to start to get familiar with the language of finance and their numbers, and what advice, maybe even for the smallest of business owners, somebody who's brand new to entrepreneurship, how would you have them get comfortable with this space?
So I think people that are listening to your show are already taking that first step. There is a ton of information out there about finance and what it all means. So learning is key. Putting your head in the sand and not paying attention to your books and your analysis and everything to do with your business is probably the only bad answer.
Mhm.
Um, obviously hiring a fractional CFO to me is the best way because that person's got the expertise and the experience, but they're also going to explain it to you in a way that works.
Right, it's not super hands
I-
off, right? It sounds like this relationship is pretty strategic partnership.
it it has to be, right? So I can't necessarily explain finance to somebody that doesn't want to hear what finance is, or doesn't care, right? You have to come into my world a little bit and understand what a balance sheet and a profit and loss statement is, why we look at the cash flow, and that's different than the two. what leverage is, and why we're going to have this huge loan out there when the SBA we acquire the business. Just all those different things. You have to understand the basic concepts and ideas, but most entrepreneurs think they have to do it, and they have to put on that finance hat and go in a room and make their budget and then come out and execute. And it's a recipe for disaster, right? You want a good partnership where the CFO handles the CFO tasks and helps you through that. The biggest thing that I can provide is that education and partnership to say, here's what it means, right? Here's with your insurance, here's what those policies are and what they do and what they cover the risk for, right? Here's what could happen if you have a loss. In the financials, here's what that means. If we hire this person and do these things, it's going to increase sales, it's going to increase margin, it's going to decrease some other things. Here's what it means. And you don't have to understand every single one of those levers, but we should be able to look at that together, and you should have a basic understanding of what that means, right? How much more money is going to be in your pocket.
Right. More informed decisions, because I think a lot of times people think about in the business, insurance, all these things just being more expenses without necessarily seeing like, well, this is why. And then once that makes sense, then usually it's like, okay, this is, either a trade-off here that we're going to have to do, or something to consider. But I do think that's helpful to have somebody to consult with, because a lot of times entrepreneurship it can be hard. These decisions can be hard. Or you hear about something and you're like, do I need that? What do I need to do? So kind of having somebody else who's been there to be able to at least clarify and be able to kind of say, yeah, I think this would be good for the business. This is a must-have, or this is maybe something we want to add in the future that we might not need day one. But I think that piece of the puzzle is super helpful. How can people find you if they want to learn more about your business, or listen to you more on some of the other shows that you've appeared on?
So our website is ppsfinance.com. The PPS is for people, process, systems. I'm a huge believer in those three things in that order. So when I decided to name my company on an early Tuesday morning, I just picked the first thing that came to mind, and that's what it is. So it's called PPS Solutions, but the website is ppsfinance.com. There you can make an appointment with us to talk about anything. We do pretty deep discovery if we're actually going to go down the CFO path, but I'm always happy to answer questions and figure out what resource you might need if it isn't a CFO, help you identify that resource and get you on the path. I do work with with some friends that have businesses that are way smaller than I would work with normally. I love doing it. I love just actually looking at their stuff and helping them get to a place where they maybe sometime in the future can afford that service. But to me, it's about serving small business. So I'll answer any question. We'll take any meeting, and even if it's not the right fit for the CFO service, I love helping people. I love helping business.
No, I think that's great. So yeah, check out his website. Like he said, this, even if it's not the right fit, sometimes you have these discovery calls or these consultations, and then you get pointed in the right direction, or you get some information that can definitely start to help you, as you're growing and scaling, or it could be a good fit. So thank you so much for joining me today, John. It was really interesting to talk about this piece of finance that I think a lot of business owners need to learn more about and explore in order to grow their business strategically and to continue to succeed. If you're looking at your own financial plan and you want to learn a little bit more about financial literacy, head over to mistylynch.com. I would love to set up some time to meet with you, or you could catch up on other episodes of the podcast or grab a copy of the book. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll talk again next week. Thank you for joining us on another insightful episode of Demystifying Money. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Don't forget to share with friends and family, and together, let's demystify the world of money. Stay tuned for more engaging conversations on our next episode. And remember, knowledge is the key to financial empowerment.